Well, we had incidents in Colorado and in the state of Washington and Oregon where the governors questioned the number of people that actually died from COVID 19. And you may recall that Dr. Burke said many months ago that if a person went into the hospital and died of a heart attack, she wanted it counted as a COVID case, COVID death.
Yes.
So they began to start looking at autopsies and death certificates and found as much as 15% of the death cases related to COVID 19 in their respective states were in fact bogus.
Exactly. So I think what we're seeing is we've been duped in a number of different ways. We've been, we've
You really
had
think
cases.
so?
I
You
do.
really?
I think that I really think so. I think it's pretty clear to most Americans, even those that, are watching MSDNC day and night, I think can realize that there has been either wild incompetence or downright deception on the part of our state health officials and the CDC, because we saw that cases that were where a death occurred where it wasn't because of the flu or coronavirus, it was being marked down as COVID-19. And also now that we're counting probable cases as COVID-19. And it's really crazy. I encourage people to go check out the video that I posted on my social media. And in that, you can see that they have a little chart of confirmed case, like case number 1, the person who actually has COVID-19 had a positive lab result. And then they have all these little branches. Okay, well, their family was 5 people, and their coworker, and then their coworker's family, and their neighbor, and their friend. And all of a sudden they add up these numbers. And then it says, total, 1 confirmed case, 16 probable cases, total cases in this scenario would be 17. So all of a sudden, from 1 positive case, these, contact tracers are deducing how many other people were exposed, if they have a headache, and all of a sudden they're counting those people as probable cases. I mean, I think that this is the one of the reasons why we're seeing a huge uptick in cases, but not necessarily seeing an increase in deaths, percentage-wise. So, it's just something that's really wild, and it's crazy to me that, I'm an independent filmmaker, that I'm talking about this stuff, and I post this video on social media, and it gets 1 million views, but nobody in the mainstream media is talking about this. And to me, this is one of the biggest stories surrounding this, hysteria over the increased cases.
So if I could ask you to look into your role as an investigative filmmaker, what does your brain tell you of why they're lying to us?
This is just my opinion, and I don't have, hard evidence of this, but my suspicion is that they are inflating the cases to increase hysteria and to drive public policy and to push us back into shutdown, and to, further cripple our economy. Because as it happened just as things were starting to open up, that all of these cases started to increase, sending us back into shutdown. And where I live in California, we were set to reopen last Wednesday, and Tuesday they announced, no, we're not going to be reopening, the next stage of gyms and, certain salons and restaurants, that we're not moving forward because of this increase in cases, despite seeing the fact that the death rate continues to decline.
So are you suspicious of any political motivation against Mr. Trump?
I believe that in 2020, we're in an election year. I think that virtually everything that's happening right now could be politically motivated. It seems to me like, I find it hard to believe some of the stunts that the Democrats have pulled, but we look back over the last 3.5 years of President Trump's, of him being in office, and what have they've thrown everything at him, Russia collusion, the impeachment scandal. Now he's dealing with a pandemic, all of these things, his tax returns, Stormy Daniels, every single thing they want to try to throw at this guy to throw a wrench in his achievements and his presidency, they've thrown at him. And what's his biggest accomplishment, and the thing he's been campaigning on, is the economy. And now our economy is, in the toilet. So I have no doubt that President Trump can bring it back. but I think that this is it could be a very likely reason why Democrat leadership is, sort of pushing us back into shutdown.
And I should probably disclose to you, I'm a sort of an investigative reporter. I write for 20 plus different news blogs on a weekly basis. And so I just sent to my editors a commentary that talks about the three things that are going to be important to Americans in the general election. And would you care to guess what is missing from those three?
So I'm guessing, what are the three things that most voters are interested in?
You can do that, or you can say, I wonder, of all the things that are out there, what would he choose not to include? That's what I'm trying to get you to understand, is that I've identified three things that I think will motivate American voters to go to the polls, probably in record numbers, and re-elect Donald Trump in a landslide.
Ooh.
I'll make it easy. Make it easy
I mean,
for you.
I have my guess. I would say the economy, probably, jobs. I mean, I guess that's kind of related to the economy, but just a strong economy, strong stock market, jobs, and probably security. Like, he's the law and order president, and safety. Am I close, or what do you think?
Yeah, you're close. The one thing that I did not include as the three most important, believe it or not, was COVID-19.
Oh yeah,
That ship has sailed.
Yeah.
I think these are the following three things that will be most important. One, we cannot defund the police.
Yes.
And the Democrats have backed themselves into a corner where there's no way for them to get out. So they can't take that back. Number two, the track record of the Democrats in dealing with the riots and the looting and the protest has been abominable. So the Democratic machines in all these major cities has failed, and we're seeing hundreds of people now being murdered and shot every week.
Mm-hmm.
We had the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia, who said after the young lady was shot and killed over the weekend, she said, I'm paraphrasing somewhat, can you stop shooting at each other? It wasn't a police issue. It's black on black crime. She did nothing. She did nothing to try and stabilize the volatility in the community. But that was common of all the major cities where you had the Democratic mayors. The Democrats have owned the cities for 40 years or more. They refused to get involved. They had the police stand down. So the first is
can't defund the police.
Right.
And the Democrats' track record handling these riots. And then what's your third issue?
American history.
Oh my gosh. Amen. I mean, I agree with you in that I think that those are all super important things to America. It's funny though, because that's not really, I mean, Trump does run against the Democrats' track record and their terrible handling of, their cities and states. And we see the stark difference between where I live in, communist California versus other red states. And it's just, the difference, the disparity is just wild. But I think you're so right, and you're onto something. I think this is really a cultural, election that we're going to be in, and Americans need to choose, what do they want their America to look like? Do they want it to look like the Democrat cities from coast to coast with the homeless and high crime and, drugs on our streets and, just the inmates running the asylum? Or do they want law and order and security and a strong economy and history and our American history?
That's what the president said in Mount Rushmore, and that's what he said on the 4th of July. His theme was about the people who've come before us and what they've done to make this country great.
Mm-hmm.
and his executive order to protect the national monuments. I mean, here's the two things. Anybody who is following what's going on with the monuments now after last weekend has to understand that whoever is leading these people to do this have no sense of American history.
No.
And I say that because why would Black Lives Matters people knock down and destroy one of the icons of the civil rights movement from the Civil War? But
Yeah.
they did that. They did that in upstate New York. They took down uh, the black activist statue and threw it over a fence. They didn't know that the general who was statue was taken down in your neck of the woods in San Francisco, who was the Union general, who was an abolitionist and worked on the Underground Railroad. His statue was torn down, and nobody can come up with on the left a rationale why both of these statues were taken down. It makes no
Mm-hmm.
sense. And
Yeah.
so they're attacking the idea that we should take down the statues of Washington and Jefferson. We're going to take down the founder of our country. I was originally born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. And I lived there for about 27 years. Then I moved to New York for 37 years. And I talked to my two sisters who still live in Columbus last weekend, and I said, so what did you think about the city government taking down the statue given to them by the city of Genoa, Italy, of Christopher Columbus? And they said, everybody's outraged. Everybody's outraged. In addition, they want to get rid of the name of the city of Columbus
Oh my
and
God.
change it to Flavorville.
You're kidding me.
No, go on the internet, Google and find it. Now,
My jaw is on my desk right now. I
yeah,
am that is I've heard some loony things from the left, but that is beyond next level.
right. So I think that we need to have the lady congresswoman who's a potential candidate for vice president is saying that we should have a dialogue on whether we should keep the Washington Monument. I said, no, there's not a dialogue. The American people are not going to stand for the idea that we should tear down the Lincoln Memorial, we should tear down the Washington Monument. It's not going to happen. So what we have to do is we have to get legislation in force to stop that from happening. See, what I said in the commentary, it's not masses of people who are forcing these democratic local governments to take down these statues.
Yes.
It's a very small minority of people who are vocal. It's like the guy who was the supposed leader of the Black Lives Matter movement in New Jersey said, again on the internet, if we don't get what we want, we're going to burn this down. Really? If we don't, so you're trying to blackmail the United States. And so it's not happening. And so the idea that we should abandon our history, for what? What do we replace the statue with? The idea of having statues is to help us understand where we came from, warts and all.
Yes.
And
I
that,
agree with
and
you.
that if we tear it down, if we take the statue of Robert E. Lee off of Monument Avenue in Richmond, Virginia, what are we going to replace it with? And I asked this question: are we going to replace it with a statue of Mr. Lloyd, who was killed in Minneapolis? Is he the new martyr for the cause and therefore deserves a statue? Well, if we're saying we're tearing these statues down from because people made decisions in their life at that point in time that we don't agree with today, should we honor somebody with a statue who was incarcerated, was arrested 9 times, spent time in jail, who was a drug user and was using counterfeit money. Is that the kind of person we want to put on a pedestal as a representative of what the Black Lives Matter movement is about? I don't think so. And the other thing that the Democrats are not paying attention to, and I have a gentleman I do a show with every other week in Chicago, a black man who's been on the radio in Chicago a long time. He says black people don't want the statues down because that's part of their history too. They're outraged that they would think that they want to take down the Lincoln Emancipation Proclamation statue in Emancipation Park in Washington, D.C. So we have been manipulated into believing that our history, our past, doesn't count. And somebody once said, if you don't remember your history, you're likely to repeat it. We learn from history. We learn from the good and we learn from the bad. And we've become a much better country because we've learned from our history. I apologize for getting on my soapbox.
I loved it. I look forward to reading your article because I love those 3 points that you brought up. You know, it's important to keep our country, to keep America, America. And,
right.
You know, I think that President Trump is the only candidate that's going to stand up for, you know, American values and our history and law and order at this point, because the Democrats have, you know, not just the radical Democrats, you know, the squad, but the mainstream Democrat Party has been taken over by radicals on the left that want to, you know, demand defund the police, abolish ICE, you know, defund our, you know, so many of our agencies and institutions. You know, not that we should never consider reform or fixing things that are broken, but to just want to tear it all down without solutions in place to help protect our citizens is lunacy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. So what other things are you writing about or filming about?
You know, honestly, it just depends on kind of what comes up. A lot of my videos are, you know, things that I see that I'm kind of inspired by. I come from a more entertainment type background. So the video that President Trump retweeted last night, you know, wasn't a piece of, you know, incredible journalism on my part, but it was actually, I was motivated to edit an honest Joe Biden ad. So I cut together clips of things that Joe Biden had said, juxtaposed against Nancy Pelosi's endorsement of Joe Biden. And the result is hilarious. It's like a perfect 1-minute ad of who Joe Biden is in all of his just hateful, racist, you know, incompetent ways. And it is absolutely hilarious, but also very poignant. So, you know, I enjoy putting together content like this. It's both entertaining and informative. You know, it's just a lot of fun for me to get to use my skill set to help expose the radical left. So I hope your followers check me out. They can find me at, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Fog City Midge. That's my nickname and my handle. Or they can look me up under Maggie Vandenberg, either way.
Well, as we wrap up here with you, I appreciate you being on. Thanks for coming on early. I know we were supposed to have you on later, but I thank you for being with us, and thanks for being on the program with us today.
Hey, thank you so much for what you're doing. Keep on